Welcome everybody. Welcome to the Institute of Fundraising Virtual First Thursday.
Good morning. So, whilst you're all coming in online, who have we got coming to our webinar this morning? If you want to use the chat box and put in your charity name and maybe what your role is, that will help us understand who we've got watching today. I hope you're all keeping well during these times. We're just waiting for everybody to come through. Oh, we've got quite a few chats coming on here.
Fantastic. So we've got 200 attendees at the moment and going up by the seconds. Fantastic. Welcome everyone. Type in the chat where you're dialing in from. It's great to see you.
Oh, great mix of charities coming on right now.
Oh, wow.
Barnardo's,
British Museum,
Action for Kids, Mind, Children's
it's great to see you all.
Tear Fund, Copperfield.
Fantastic. Welcome. What a great name. 224 now. Welcome everyone. Good morning. And it's 2 past.
Okay. Whilst we're waiting for everybody still to come on, I think we're going to hand over to Juliet to do the official intro.
The official one, how exciting. Thanks, Julie and Vanessa. So hello and welcome to the Chartered Institute of Fundraising South East and London region's second virtual First Thursday. Due to the success of our last events, we're bringing you today a panel session that's looking at the next 6 months and how you look at immediate priorities and focus on strategy. So we still feel like we're learning the ropes, or maybe that's just me. So please do bear with us if there are any minor hiccups, like going on to the next slide, Vanessa. Vanessa? Thank you. So my name is Julia Ellis. I chair the committee, and the lovely people you see on your screen and on the next shot. Vanessa? Thank you.
No problem. Just let me know when to change the slides over, Juliet. Just say to next slide.
Will do. So these are all the volunteers who are responsible for delivering our fabulous networking events. So we're all dedicated to promoting excellence in fundraising, and I'd like to thank the committee for all the hours of unpaid time they put in towards achieving this goal. We're recruiting for a head of mentoring and a treasurer at the moment, so please do get in touch if you're interested in joining our friendly and frankly fabulous voluntary team. I'd also like to thank Eden Brown, who sponsors our physical networking events and who you should definitely be speaking to if you're looking to change jobs or recruit. If anyone today is not yet a member of the IOF, I've got a special offer for you. If you use the code LDN/group, that's all caps, LDN/group, you can get a whopping £44 off your first annual membership, and then that just leaves you to pay £7.09 by monthly direct debit. So take advantage whilst you can. And I'm now going to hand back to Julie Roberts, our head of events, who will run through how today's session is going to work. Thank you.
Thanks, Juliet. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Hope you're nice, bright and breezy. What have we got a session for you? So, the house rules. So this session is being recorded, just to let everybody know. So smile, we're all on camera. No, not you guys, just us. Second thing is, as our panellists talk through today, what we'd really love you to do is put any of your questions in the Q&A box. So not the chat function, please, the Q&A box. That will really help us be able to monitor the questions that are coming through. But also, all of you listening, you can also rate those questions. So if someone has put a question in there which is really, really important, you really actually agree, you think that's a really interesting question, you can actually make sure that that question goes to the top. Also, just to let you all know that you will be on mute, so please just make sure that you use the Q&A box for questions and chat for any other issues that you may have. On to the next slide, please, Vanessa. Okay, so what we're going to cover today, we have a great panelist of speakers for you. They're each going to go through and talk about their key insights and thoughts. And then we're going to go straight into our Q&A session. So your questions will feed directly over to the panel, and we will probably spend at least half an hour talking through those. So make sure your questions come through thick and fast. So I'm going to, next slide please, Vanessa. I'm going to hand back to Juliet now, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Julie. Okay, so we have an amazing panel of speakers for you today. Amongst many other things, Mark Astarita spent 14 years as Executive Director of Fundraising at the British Red Cross, and has also been voted the most influential person in fundraising in the UK 4 times. He currently runs Astarita, Aldrich and Ward with 2 other fundraising greats, and he and his colleagues advise charities in developing robust fundraising and marketing strategies, as well as supporting the recruitment of the finest fundraising talents in the world. His greatest lockdown achievement, he tells me, has been getting his 2 boys out of their bedrooms, off the PlayStations, and painting the whole of the outside of his house, which is frankly an incredible feat. Sarah Jane O'Neill is an interim consultant at AW and is currently Philanthropy Director at the Scouts. She has a string of astonishing achievements to her name, including raising over £350,000 for mental health charities at the Virgin Money London Marathon in 2017, increasing major giving income by over 50% at Stonewall, and cultivating 6- and 7-figure gifts for the Imperial War Museum. Wow. Before she was a fundraiser, Sarah Jane was apparently beheaded. Luckily though, this was when she was working as an actor on the Discovery Channel when she was playing one of Henry VIII's wives. Jo Swinhoe is Director of Income Generation, Fundraising and Engagement for the NSPCC, and before that she had a varied and successful career, not only in the third sector, but also in the Army, where she worked as a commissioned officer for 8 years, as well as owning and running her own private healthcare business. Jo enjoys running, skiing, singing in a semi-professional folk group called Broomdasher, playing the accordion, reading, watching a lot of sport, and being a grandma. We're absolutely chuffed to bits that they agreed to be on our panel today, and it'd be fantastic if you could please tweet about it using the hashtag IUFThursday. Please also tag the speakers, you can see their Twitter handles on your screens, and us at IUF London. And now, without further ado, I'm delighted to hand over to Mark, Jo, and Sarah Jane. Thank you.
Thanks, Juliet, and what a wonderful welcome. Always embarrassing to be reminded how many times you guys have all voted for me. I think I owe you a few bits for that. Listen, I'm not going to spend ages on this pest. Who would have imagined a few months ago we would be drawing up a pest that looked like this, with so many challenges? And I think I want to sort of pay tribute to all the, well, there's 328 fundraisers currently on this call, who are out there fundraising right now in the midst of a crisis. I have been in awe of so many fundraisers who are doing remarkable jobs and actually, frankly, raising considerable sums of money at a time of enormous national and international crisis. I mean, looking at this pest, if you look at the challenges that we as a sector will face, the economy will face, and only a few of those look like opportunities, one of which, of course, is that tech thing. Who would have imagined we'd be doing First Thursday, not in a pub, not having sandwiches and sausage rolls, but with 300 people in a room, all talking to each other like this. I mean, everything has changed. Nothing is normal. And I think it's important to give you all a big health warning. Everything we say today is a hypothesis. We don't really know what's going to happen next. And so all you can do is plan week by week, month by month. It would be ridiculous to suggest any of us have all the answers or even know some of the answers. Can we switch to the next slide? So I thought I'd just put a little bit of context behind this conversation. Many of you will have seen some of these figures as you sat at your screens for the last number of weeks. The sector is going to take a hammering. There is no question of that. Everyone is predicting significant loss of voluntary income, a real freezing up of voluntary income, up to 50% in in many cases is the predictions. These are some of the numbers. They do not make for pretty reading. And what I have seen and recognised, and many of our clients have said, that those that began fundraising for the emergency, for their response immediately following COVID appearing in our country, they've been really successful. There's been some really good fundraising happening and great response rates, which is really encouraging. But most charities are predicting real significant challenges with cash flow and alike, and only now beginning to wonder how they can move on. Can we have the next slide? So many charities have taken pretty dramatic action to reduce their costs, protect cash, trying to do things more digitally. Many charities, over 62%, are saying they're going to use their reserves. About bloody time, I say. If reserves are there for a rainy day, it's pouring. So absolutely, I hope charities will be using their reserves to protect their mission and further their mission. Can we have the next slide? So what's happening? What's the public saying to us? This is what some of the data is suggesting out there. People are feeling worried about their finances, and they're probably hunkering down like many organisations might be doing. I suspect all of you have been looking at the bank account and wondering how you can protect your own cash and your own position. Interestingly, in all the data from, and I should say the slides I'm showing you is part of a 35-page document. If anyone wants it, email me later. All the evidence over the last 100 years is that actually, even in really deep economic recessions, and this is data from America and the UK, people do carry on giving by and large, and charitable giving is less affected by the economic blasts that have happened, and this has happened during wars and depressions. So people remain generous, and actually part of that is because they're more in tune with what's happening around them, and I think we've seen that in ways that we couldn't imagine. The support the NHS charities have had, the support that local charities have had, the desire to volunteer, which maybe is as we've not seen the like of certainly in this generation. Next slide, please. Some charities have given out some numbers as to, in their press announcements, as to what they are suggesting might be the impact upon them. These numbers do not look pretty. 40% at Teenage Cancer Trust, the big charities like Bernardo's and Cancer Research, all taking big hits. And if you imagine with those large community fundraising activities, I think I saw a number, 100 million losses at Macmillan. You know, shops all closed and furloughed at the moment. There's a big decline in income across the board. How quickly it comes back is a big issue. Next slide, please. So who are most at risk? Those undoubtedly with big shop income, big community income, big events income. And those charities that are in a stronger position are those that are frankly carrying on fundraising, making use of their platforms and their digital engagement with their existing supporters. I mean, TV is going really well, guys. It's never been cheaper. There's never been more people looking, and it's working. So if you're out there fundraising, it definitely is working. And I have said in other places, I am surprised at how few asks I've had. And I think we need more asking out there. Come back, direct mail. Who's mailing people right now? Next slide, please. But you know, it's a risky environment, and there's no getting away from that, because you know, furlough has kind of created a sort of dreamland at the moment, while most people's salaries are being paid as we come out of the furlough scheme. And I have to say, possibly the one good thing the government has done is the furlough scheme and its extension now to October, giving people time to make those amendments that they need to consider the future, just time to think about how you might react and come through this. So, but we have to assume, and it's an assumption, but we have to assume that there's going to be a very significant economic downturn, and all that means for our sector and many other sectors too. It doesn't feel like it's going to look pretty anytime soon. I guess the question is, how quickly do we come out of that? I don't know. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Oh, oh, oh. So one of the things we have also all noticed, I think, is and hats off to them, many funders, and I'm talking about grant funders here, really flexing their grant programs, moving money into COVID, reducing the restrictions they place upon that, speeding up their processes. And so there is COVID money around there, and it's both trust foundations, corporate foundations, with quite significant gifting going on as well. So I think we need to be very positive about that. We've predicted that, you know, the trust and foundation fundraisers, who we all know the most important fundraisers in our organisations, are going to be so busy and so needed, and I suspect many of you will need more of them, because God, they're like gold dust. And of course, we've all made use of the digital platforms that were there before, but we weren't really using. We're not going back anytime soon to not using them, and the world has changed, and it's changed profoundly. Please, next slide. So, you know, those charities that are going to do better than others, no one's going to do well out of this particularly, but those that are going to do better are those with the diversified fundraising portfolio. If one area of fundraising is not working, hopefully another area will. So balancing your program, developing new channels, particularly in those digital spaces. But as I said, bring back direct mail, focusing on proving the engagement you have with. We've talked about this forever, about deeper, more meaningful conversations and relationships with our existing supporters. Now, if ever before, it's your own existing supporters who are going to be the key to you coming through this crisis. And we will see innovation in this space. We will see new fundraising models, and we will see more Sir Toms, I suspect, appearing over the coming months. Digital in all aspects, everything we do is now firmly on the table, and being able to utilize that is really so important. And I think we will, and when we speak to Sarah Jane, we will see a resurgence, and maybe for the first time. We talked a lot about philanthropy being really important and the next big thing in the UK. I think, you know, as things settle down, I think we will see levels of philanthropy that we've not seen in the UK before, and that's got to be a great thing. Just as I think we'll see more giving, more volunteering, and more wishing to be useful than ever before. Thank you. Next slide, which is a perfect segue introducing the wonderful Sarah Jane O'Neill, currently heading up philanthropy at the Amazing Scouts organisation. Sarah Jane, how's it in your world?
Very busy. I mean, Scouts are kind of in an interesting situation, and I'll talk about that in my presentation, in that we haven't sort of actively pitched ourselves at the front line at this immediate time. But we're really conscious of the need for that to change very swiftly as we come out of this at the front line for youth causes. So I'll talk about that a bit more later. So good morning, everyone. I just wanted to spend the next sort of 5 minutes or so looking at what I see as the kind of guiding principles, the 3 guiding principles that hopefully will help us through the next 6 months as major gift fundraisers. And these are just 3 quotes that I'm going to hang these principles on. And the first one is about empathy. And I talk a lot about empathy in the workshops that I run, because I think it's really the bedrock of what we do as major gift fundraisers. And I think that that's doubly true now. So I really love this idea of empathy being the only human superpower. And I think we're 3 months into this now, and hopefully our priority has been very much about checking in with the donors that are immediately in our portfolio. I think the most important conversation you can be having with your donors now is asking how they are and what is happening in their world. And as we come out of that, I think we mustn't drop the ball on that empathy. I think we need to continue to tune our antennae into how they're feeling, because that is going to be in a state of flux, as it is for all of us. And you know, whilst we're not all having the same experience of that for sure, there are commonalities. So high net worth people are like us. They're at home, stuck at home, bored, fed up, anxious for the future. And interestingly, they're unaccustomedly not in control. If you're a high net worth person, you're used to being in control of everything, and nobody is in control of this. So I think what's happened that's really interesting is that everybody's skin is a lot thinner now, and I think that's going to continue for quite some time. And actually those increased levels of empathy are very good news for fundraising, because unless somebody feels something, they're not going to act, and they're certainly not going to give. So I would say you keep empathy as your North Star, very much so in the next 6 months. Next slide, please, Vanessa. So continuing on the nautical theme, I can't help it, I'm a Piscean. And this quote is all about keep going outwards. And I can't stress that enough. I think when you feel stymied as a fundraiser, when you feel, you know, really stuck in something, you don't know how to move it forward, the answer is always to go outwards and have a conversation. And that conversation doesn't have to be about money. It doesn't have to end in money. You never know when that connection is going to unlock an idea or an introduction that gets you out of the rut that you feel you're in. And when you feel in this sort of unsafe, uncharted territory, it is really tempting just to retreat and retrench. And if you are leading in philanthropy in particular, it's really important to try and give yourself the time and the headspace to be proactive. And of course, that's really difficult when you feel like you're on a hamster in a wheel. So I think, you know, set yourself some very modest targets. Every morning, you're going to do 2 things to move 2 relationships forward on your pipeline. Really embrace technology would be my key takeaway, just to deepen those existing connections, but also to create new ones. Because what I'm finding is people are a lot more willing to connect with you now, because actually there's no escape. You know, the old excuse of I can't see you because I'm in New York. I mean, that's over now for quite a while. So actually, one-to-one screen time is quite useful, because you can, when somebody's face is up close, you can really see what they're reacting to, what they're glazing over from, and you're seeing them in their home environment. So there is an intensity and a focus about that that's quite useful. So you don't have to be in a room with somebody and breathing the same air to build rapport. You just need to be able to see and hear them, and they need to see and hear you. Ask your donors for advice. You know, many donors are, you know, running big organizations. They're used to solving problems. They've got plenty of problems at the moment. You know, they may have an interesting take on, you know, what organizational and strategic changes that they think that your charity might want to make in order to get through this period. What I would also say is try not to feel too hung up on the fact that you can't do events at the moment. You know, there may be major donors across the UK punching the air that they don't have to come to your gala, who knows. The convening power of an event is a wonderful thing. It can be really potent if it's done well, but it is not the only way to steward somebody. So use technology to find different ways to steward a donor. You know, this is a great opportunity to create a peer-to-peer connection. You might want to organise a Skype between one of your really amenable trustees and your donor, so you can build that relationship. If a donor presents well and has an interesting story to tell, you know, give them a platform. You know, maybe let them write a blog about why they give to your organisation, let them do a Facebook Q&A, or, you know, something less active, invite them to a webinar, but find other ways to move that relationship forward. Next slide, please, Vanessa. So finally, this is about kind of urgency and fear and anxiety, and something that we're all feeling. There's lots of clamouring voices now. Everything is urgent, and there's going to be a number of charities for whom that immediate urgency, you know, possibly is a new thing. You're wondering how you're going to be heard above this groundswell. And I would say, take this time to shape your story. What does your urgent look like? What does your next urgent look like? What's it going to look like by Christmas? And take the time to collect the assets that you need to really tell that story to its fullest power. And as I said earlier, you know, at Scouts, we didn't want to be pitching ourselves against the food banks and NHS. And actually what we've done is we've galvanised our membership to go out and raise money for those causes with our Hike to the Moon challenge. And we've raised with government match funding £700,000 for that. But as we come out of this, we know that the social and economic impact of COVID for young people, particularly in disadvantaged communities, is going to be on a scale that we haven't seen in any of our lifetimes. So that's when we become part of that front line. And as fundraisers, it's our job to convey that urgency with credibility and emotional impact. So I would say your priority now is to be absolutely, if you're not already doing that, buddying up with your programs team, being part of those meetings, collecting those stories, those quotes, those images. If your organisation is doing a survey, make sure that you are accessing that real data about what the state of the nation for your organisation is. If somebody presents you with a budget for a programme that you don't understand, that is incomplete, now is the time to be really pushing back on that, because when a financially astute major donor is really going to pull that apart, so you need to be clear on that. And then finally, just yes, there is an urgency. Yes, you absolutely should be going out and asking, but it still needs to be a considered ask. I would say don't do what I call magpie fundraising, which is grasping at something that looks lovely and shiny, and don't push a relationship too fast and too soon. Make sure that it is still considered. Make sure that you understand how much you're asking for, because what you don't want to do is have to go back a few months down the line and ask again. You may want to ask for a multi-year commitment, for example. And then I guess my final point about urgency is it's not your job as a major gift fundraiser to unilaterally save your organisation. It is absolutely an organisational wide approach, and you are a slice of that pie. And I think keep that in your head so that you don't feel this terrible panic that you've got to desperately go out and solicit gifts. Stay empathetic, be brave and try new things. You may fail, that's possible, but you must keep reaching out and trying new things. And then just shape what the next chapter of your story looks like, so you're ready to tell it to its fullest power. Thank you. And I'm now going to pass you over to Jo.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Now, I don't have any slides, so I think you're either just going to see my name or me, one of the two. So thanks very much to the IOF for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. I'm going to keep this really simple. It's one of my professional mantras, keep it simple, and for my purposes, keep it simple, stupid, because everything can seem incredibly complicated on a normal day, but when we have a pandemic on top of that, the pressures for fundraising income generators can be enormous. So just think about a few things. I'm just going to run them through in an order that, if you like, the NSPCC took when we were first aware that the pandemic was becoming something more than a distant issue for other parts of the world. The first thing was, what is our current fundraising strategy? Now, if you're not the director of fundraising and you are the major donor fundraiser or corporate fundraiser, what is your current strategy? You might have a strategy in corporate fundraising which is local to where your charity is based, for example. You're not a national charity, so you're looking at all the companies in Sussex. Is that still relevant? Are those companies in Sussex still able to support you in the same way? Is it a priority for the donor, your companies, to support you? Or are they furloughed and their businesses are in danger of not being there in the future? So think about your own strategy. It should be in a document. It doesn't need to be enormous. I'm also well known for writing short documents, and we have one slide which has got our strategic pillars on it. And I'm not going to embarrass Tiana, Cowan and Pardeep, who are on the call, to ask them what those are, but that is the simplicity of a strategy. It does not need to be complicated. So once you've checked whether your strategy is still relevant, the next thing is to ask yourself, okay, so in that strategy, what priorities work in this new world that we're in? And I've had fantastic speakers before me who've given you insights into the big macro piece from Mark and the major donor piece and some 3 guiding principles there, which I completely agree with. So in the world of the pandemic, what is it that are your new priorities. And in this, you might need to talk to your Director of Fundraising, or if you are a Director of Fundraising, you need to be talking to your finance department. Is the biggest priority cash? For not many charities, or for some charities, the size of reserves is not sufficient to see them through this. We've heard that. For other charities, no retail happening at all, so massive hits on day-to-day income. And from a business point of view, that means no cash coming into the business. And if there's no cash coming in through the usual routes, then I would expect a Director of Finance to be saying, our biggest priority is cash. But your strategy might be saying, but we wanted to use 2021, this financial year, to be recruiting more regular donors. Is that still practical? I can answer a question about that, but in the normal scheme of things, door-to-door fundraising, face-to-face fundraising, it's completely not practical. So in that respect, change your strategy, pause it, and think about your priorities. The organisational's priority is now cash, let's say, which is reasonable for all of us. How are you going to get that cash? You can't run your events. We heard about the Teenage Cancer Trust, for example. All of their events are cancelled. So are you able and agile enough to make any of those into virtual events? A whole new world has opened up. And the NSPCC is no different to the small charities who run events locally. We have an enormous amount of money and effort goes in from our volunteer fundraising. We're 90% volunteer funded. Getting that money in, none of those are going to happen. We're not having our coffee mornings and our tea parties. We're not having our big galas. We haven't had the London Marathon. So cash for the NSPCC was just as critical as it is for your small charities. But can you manage to be agile and think about how you can do some virtual fundraising? And by that I mean through digital channels. We've seen lots of virtual quizzes which have gone really well. Can you do something around your own cause which would engage your own supporters? We've heard very closely and clearly from Sarah Jane and Mark that it is our own donors who are most likely to know how important the cause is and to keep giving to that cause. So I don't know, if you're looking after, I think I might have seen somebody who was working for kangaroos, and it probably has got nothing to do with the animal. But let's say you were a charity that was looking after kangaroos, and that's your mission. So why not run a quiz about kangaroos, their habitats, their size, the number of baby kangaroos they have in their lifetime. Make it engaging for your donor base. It doesn't have to be a regular pub quiz. And so that also gives a way of engaging your supporters in your cause. So what we've done now is we've looked at the strategy. We've checked what elements of that are still right in this world where we can't meet face to face and we can't do much of the activity that we would usually do. And we've considered what the organisational priorities are, and probably mostly that is cash. There is also the aspects of retaining our donors and major donors. So where do people get their money from? They get their money, and by people I mean the public, you, me, and people out there who give to charity. We get our money from our jobs, or we get our money from investments, or we get our money from earnings through selling other things. Well, you can't sell much in the shop right now. The return on your investments has plummeted. So whether you're a trust and foundation or a major donor, the capacity to give may be significantly different. And your strategy might be telling you that actually this was a time when we were really going to go for that big transformational project. That is gone. So put yourself into your donor's shoes and understand what the priorities are today for them. If they're a business, it might just be staying afloat and staying a business. If you're a major donor, you're no longer getting your 10% return on your let property or your gilts or your bonds. So you have no money to give, and it would be embarrassing to be asked. But ask in the right way, and that gift may come later when things get better. So just be careful about what you're asking for. My fourth point is about focusing on the need. Many charities that are in this event today will not be delivering directly related work for COVID. We do, we have Childline, we have Helpline, We have children who are going through horrendous issues during lockdown. So in many ways, the need for our services is really obvious. So just think how your need can be translated. I noticed a comment about a wildlife charity and how do you make that relevant? It's so relevant today. I don't know how many of you watch Spring Watch, but the mindfulness moment, I just adore it. I don't live in the country, I live in central London, but finding a green space during this time of pandemic has been really important to me. So think how you can translate what your cause is into COVID related. And then of course you can apply for grants by making it more accessible or putting film on your website and making that available to everybody. And my last point is a broad one about fundraising strategy, income generation strategy. So in the NSPCC, I'm not responsible just for voluntary income. I'm also responsible for commercial income and earned income through contracts and tenders. The difference for us is that that gives us really easy cohesion and sharing across the income generating piece. We are absolutely not siloed. We used to be. We were famous for it, but we're not anymore. We're 100% focused on the need and on children. And the question was asked in the Q&A, do your trusts and foundations do corporate foundations or do your corporate team? Now I answered saying trusts and foundations do, but to be perfectly honest, it would be perfectly reasonable for the corporate team. It's always best person for the ask. It's the person with the best relationship. And so when you're thinking about your fundraising strategy going forwards or talking to your teams and your director of fundraising about that, one needs to think about what we've learned from this. Charities who have a mixed income portfolio, what I've always described as a carpet of income, which is stronger together. But if you pull one or two threads out, the carpet still stays, it's just a little bit threadbare. But if you only have a carpet, which is retail, and your retail goes, the amount of income to your charity falls. So the strength of a mixed income portfolio, even if in a small charity, these are small income streams in terms of cash, money in, it's still really important to be as mixed as possible. So I'd like to stop there and thank you very much for the opportunity, and I look forward to answering some questions over the next half hour or so. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That was just full of insights. I've been madly typing away as the questions have been piling in. So I'm going to hand straight over to Mark. So at the moment, apologies everyone, I think we're having a slight issue with rating the questions, but it's okay because we've got them all logged. So we're going to get through them all. I'm just going to start from the top. Okay, so this was a question for all the panel from Stephen. So regarding our lovely donors, do you feel that there will need to be greater flexibility in communication when we get to sometime dreaded the yearly review?
Well, maybe if Sarah Jane unmutes as well, and I'll, I think it's always right to say ladies first. So I don't know, Joe, I guess it's best if the panel unmutes. Joe, your thoughts on that? Maybe Sarah Jane has some thoughts too.
I was busy answering a question from someone. So what was the question? Sorry.
The question was, do you feel that there will be a need to be have greater flexibility and communication when we get to the yearly review?
Oh, the annual review, sorry. Yes. I think the main thing is to have that conversation. I'm assuming that the question comes from the perspective of a trust requiring reporting. So they may have been funding a face-to-face program or a hands-on program, a virtual program, which of course has paused. So if it hasn't been done already, absolutely call up all your trusts and foundations and donors, major and otherwise, and say and answer. Let them know what your problems are, let them know what your challenges are, get them to agree to pause the programme. They might, for the purposes of reporting, because they have SORPs, standard operating and reporting procedures to reply to, they may need you to give an interim report, but given that COVID is what it is, I think that there will be complete understanding But what I would seriously recommend we don't do is wait till the last minute and then go back and say, oh, we haven't been doing that service for 6 months, so we can't possibly give you a report.
Yeah, no surprises at this moment in time. Sarah Jane, has the conversation changed at your end?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree that, you know, it is all about transparency. And I think when it comes to that point, if somebody is funding a multi-year program or they're renewing an annual donation, that you're not suddenly just having that conversation at the last minute, that it's an ongoing conversation, and that you are sharing your concerns with them and listening to their concerns too. So yeah, absolutely agree.
And I think the one thing that I think is happening by and large, and there'll always be exceptions, is that there's a level of kindness.
Yeah.
People are more willing to maybe engage in conversations than maybe at other times. They're not people filtering it for them. And I think there's also an understanding of the challenges that everyone is facing. So maybe there's just a little bit more openness to wishing to communicate. So, you know, frankly, make use of that moment. You got another question for us?
Yes, I do. This one's specifically for you, Mark. So someone's asked where there's the source of your data that you were showing. Oh,
well, the source of my data is always Tobin, because he's the cleverest person in AAW. But as I said, there's a 35, 40-page document, and I'll make sure some of those quotes are sourced. We probably nicked them off a few people.
Okay, amazing.
But I think they're all in. I think you'll find they're all in the public domain.
Okay, amazing. Okay, so this is another one. Do we know if any charities have managed to move their shops, so in brackets clothing, online to compensate for loss of income?
Well, maybe I can offer a few insights around retail. I'm a trustee of a hospice, and we have shops in our portfolio, and I think, you know, retail is going to be one of the biggest challenges for charities to consider how they get back. And I think no one really knows the answer there. I think CRA put some terrific guidance notes out for people as to how to do that. But, you know, there are enormous challenges. Now, online has continued to function. I mean, we have to be honest, it's never in any way replacing the physical aspects of charity shopping, charity rummaging. But the challenges in retail that I perceive, and I think everyone can understand, are even if charities are able to do all the right things, so social distancing in small shops is going to be tricky. All the volunteering that happens in shops is by and large done by older people, not exclusively, but by and large. Will they come back to help sort the absolute avalanche of stock, because we've had the UK's biggest spring clean ever, and everyone's waiting to take their black bags of stuff, which I've got 10 in the garage, waiting to go to our charity shops. Will there be anyone there to sort it? They've got to hang on to it for 48 hours before they can even sell it. Will there be social distancing? Will anyone queue to go into a charity shop? There are so many questions we don't know and can't answer right now. All we can do is do what all great fundraisers do, is test and learn and test again. And as we learn and test, keeping our staff and our volunteers safe, as well as our consumers, will be the priority for every director of fundraising and retail, every board and every chief executive. It's going to be not easy to do, and it can only be done slowly. And I think furlough gives us a little bit more time to let that open up slowly. But let's be honest, online is not going to replace the 10,000 charity shops we have out there that people love to go in.
Okay, amazing, thank you. Okay, so slight change, but this was from Hannah. She said, I'd love to hear your thoughts about how to, in brackets, sensitively, do legacy messaging or ask during the pandemic.
Joe, you got it written in will this in the last few months?
Yes, the fundraisers are known for having a black sense of humour, aren't they? But we have avoided that because the number of people dying unexpectedly who are in good health has just been extraordinary. We have paused a little bit of our legacy marketing because we had reframed everything into the Still Here for Children appeal, which will run for the whole of this year one way or another. I think it is important to continue to talk to your own donors about the importance of leaving a legacy. And if it's done sensitively, which it always should be anyway, one can never know how it's going to land because you don't know the circumstances of the person at the end of the phone or at the end of the direct mail or at the end of the television advert. So I would suggest if you're writing to people that you do say, you know, we're sorry if this arrives with you at a difficult time. I think that's a reasonable approach to take. Television is very cheap at the moment, so if you don't usually get on television, it might be worth spending 20 or 30,000 pounds in a very simple, low budget type of ask. So I'm a trustee with the Royal Voluntary Service, and we haven't gone with a high budget DRTV appeal. And I know charities often think it's incredibly expensive, but it isn't. Now, that's not a legacy advert, but I just wanted to highlight that people are put off using television because they think it's expensive. But what we've seen at the moment is that something spoken from the heart, the need from the heart by somebody who's working in it. So we have a childline counsellor in our adverts. The RVS have a volunteer talking about supplying the first responders, which is what we're doing with NHS. So don't shy away from it, just be uber sensitive and spend an appropriate amount of money, remembering that I suspect your Director of Finance is saying cash today is more important, sadly, at the minute, than promoting legacies, which will return in 7 or 8 years' time.
So I think Joe's absolutely right that, you know, I mean, I think the right short answer to legacy marketing should always be done sensitively, COVID or no COVID, and it's about a life affirming, remarkable gifts that, you know, last forever and ever and ever. I think a couple of things on legacies. I mean, first of all, there has never been more people writing their will than over these last few months. There has been an absolute surge in will writing, whether it's on online will writing services, and of course solicitors are mostly closed, so that's proven to be a challenge. All the legacy marketing came off the television in the first few weeks of COVID. Who replaced it? The life insurance companies that were selling stuff that didn't even include COVID as something. So listen, I think done sensitively, charities should be marketing legacies all year round, all the time, at every moment, and in particular to your own supporters. And it isn't about death. It's never about death. It's about amazing gifts that are going to change lives and change environments and change everything. So legacies are, or wills and legacies and gifts in wills are the only next big thing in charities. There will be a pause, because there's a pause at the moment because it's frozen up. There's going to be a pause because there's a very good possibility that property prices will drop, and obviously stocks and shares have tanked. But as that starts to re-emerge, and obviously Joe's right, short term, it might not be bringing money in tomorrow, but in the next 3 to 5 years, legacies are still the thing that could transform our sector. Julie, another question.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I'm just having intruders coming in whilst I'm mid-webinar.
The beauty of webs as people walk past your, our 16-year-old walked past a conference I was doing without his shirt on, which was the highlight of the conference.
Yes. Yeah, so moving swiftly on then, another question is around sort of time frame and horizon that you're all working on with your fundraising strategy. So Chris has asked, in order to secure the largest gifts or multi-year commitments, a degree of clarity on future is necessary, 18 months versus 3 years. What's your thoughts on that? What time frame?
How are you approaching this, the issue of the now and the tomorrow? Can you hear us, Sarah Jane?
Oh, sorry, I wasn't sure whether you were asking me. Yeah, it's interesting. As I said earlier, you know, we're kind of coming out of this period where scouting really starts becoming part of the front line, when, you know, you've got all these young people who've had 10 years of austerity, 70% cuts in youth services, and now they've kind of been raised the aftermath of a global pandemic. So it's doubly cruel. And we've been surveying our groups, and I think we had about a 28% response back. And about 85% of the people that responded are continuing to do some kind of online activities. But of course, the most deprived areas where there are groups haven't responded because, you know, they've got other things on their plates. And they are the people that we absolutely want to make sure get up and running. And it is really difficult, the timing issue, because we don't know when face-to-face scouting is going to come back. We're kind of working on the principle that, you know, maybe it'll be September, but we don't know. That will probably be socially distanced. There'll probably continue to be, you know, online scouting taking place. So I don't think, as we said earlier, like nobody has a crystal ball about what is going to be happening. I just think you have to make your basic plan, have to make an assumption of where you think something is going to start, and be ready to tell that story. So be ready with, you know, all of the assets that you've collected about telling that story. What does that story look like for that young disadvantaged person in a really left behind community who has only had scouting to look forward to? You know, there's been lots of really touching stuff that we've seen about, you know, kids really miss their friends, and actually seeing all their little friends on the Zoom, you know, they're all sitting there in their little knackers. And it's bringing them a huge amount of joy and a kind of sense of belonging and community. That is going to be so essential coming out of this.
So you talk, sorry, carry on, Jane, sorry.
No, that was it.
Joe, you were talking about the immediacy of cash over, you know, the potential for longer term. How are you balancing it in the NSPCC?
Yes, we are going with cash, and we have upped the ask rate to our major donors, to the major donors who are known to us, and we've been incredibly generous, remembering that we are delivering frontline services. Our childline and helpline staff are key workers, so we're in a uniquely privileged position, I suspect, compared to some other charities. So my more general reflection, which might be more useful for people, is that short-term fundraising strategies don't deliver the best returns, whether it's for a company or whether it's for an individual or even for somebody in the community. It's no good them just feeling that this is just, you know, a small year. It should be a relationship. So we now have a 3-year fundraising income generation strategy, which is reviewed annually. That is part of what will be a 10-year organisational strategy. That's a complete shift. But if you're dealing with a big cause, a big change needing to happen, and you are confident that you have the evidence that tells you what the drivers need to be to make that change, you're never going to achieve that in a year. And an annual budget is an annual budget for running a business, the business of being the charity. What we need as fundraisers is a 3-year projection. So we've brought that in fairly recently, a 3-year financial projection. Work with finance to get them to highlight where big spends might be coming from if you don't know about that, because sometimes, you know, you don't hear everything. It doesn't matter whether you're a big or a small organisation. But I would really emphasise the need to have a long-term strategy, to review it regularly. We would usually have been reviewing it every 6 months. We review it every month at the moment. Are we on track? Is our strategy still working? Now that for me feels really uncomfortable, because a strategy is a long-term operation, but we're in completely uncharted, unknown waters. So I don't know whether this, well, who does? We can guess. Is there going to be a recession? Is there going to be a depression, which is what, 2 or 3 years of recession? Are people going to be enormously generous? Those who've got money, those who haven't got money, how is that going to work? Is there going to be a lot of civil unrest? So there are so many things that we don't know, that just keeping on top of it and keeping close to the heartbeat of your own organisation versus the heartbeat of the community that you're working in and for would be my strong recommendation. In normal terms, 3 years, definitely.
Julie, have we got another question?
Yes, and I think this might be our last one. We've got 5 minutes left, unless we can, you know, keep it short. So we've got lots of unanswered questions. I apologise for that. But the last one I really want to focus on is we've got questions around innovation. So Mark, you spoke about this. So this question comes from Laura. She said, have you seen any innovation projects recently that you have been impressed with? And what were their initial results, if you know of them?
Well, just from me, I mean, I think whether we call it innovation or just doing things slightly differently, I think one of the things that I've seen, and we used to actually do at the Red Cross at times of emergencies, was, you know, as Sarah Jane said, there's an awful lot of donors that are absolutely delighted there's not going to be a charity ball this side of Christmas. But actually, they're really interested in what's happening in your organisation and probably really concerned about what's happening in your organisation. I have heard of and seen and participated in some really fascinating Skype, Zoom calls where donors are in the room and listening to what's happening maybe on the front line. In particular, this was an air ambulance. People flocked. And I always remember at the Red Cross, donors loved to hear the aid worker in the camp or in the war zone reporting back on what they can see. We're all a bit nosy about this stuff, and donors love to hear that story from the front line, with the howls and whistles going on, the dodgy line that's the internet connection or whatever it might be. And it's authentic, it's real, it's rich. And I know quite a few charities are now doing that. And surprise, surprise, people are coming online. I even know of one charity where they're pretty sure their royal patron was online too. I mean, who would have guessed? That never happens in normal times. So all I would say is make use of the technology, invite people into your home as part of your family, have absolutely authentic and genuine conversations. You'll be surprised how engaged people will be at this moment in time when they're maybe not quite as busy as they used to be. Anything on your side, Joe, that you're seeing that's exciting you?
I don't think I want to take up too much time to answer differently, to be honest, Mark. I think you've highlighted the main points.
Great.
Okay, fab. One last really quick question, Joe. Somebody's asked if they could see your one-page fundraising strategy.
Yeah, I just answered that. And the answer is a polite no. But what I can do, if you want me to come back to another First Thursday, is talk about how you might construct your own one-page fundraising strategy.
Yes, that sounds
To be perfectly honest, that would be far more useful than sharing mine, because for a bit of copying and nicking, you know, I'm well known for it, really, to be honest. But it has to be relevant to your own organisation. So you can't just, it's not just a cut and paste job, you know, you've got to think it through. So if you wanted me to do another session where we could think through the creation of your one-page strategy, I'm really happy to do that.
Yes, that would be amazing. And lots of people are agreeing with that on the chat.
Oh
so
dear.
thank you for that kind of
Well, if you can all donate £5 to the NSPCC, that would be even better.
Okay, I'm sure people will be willing to make a donation.
Because I'm a fundraiser, and how could I possibly not ask?
Okay, I'm going to hand back to Juliet now. So thank you, guys. That was amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and a massive thank you from me to our panellists. That was incredibly interesting, helpful, but also a massive thank you to the committee. There's been so much work going on behind the scenes, and yeah, we do really appreciate it. We've set up a COVID-19 discussion group on our Facebook page, so please do head over there and carry on the conversation with us. We'll be back on the first Thursday in August, so keep an eye out for what's coming up next. And thank you so much for joining, and we hope to see you again very soon. Stay safe and thank you. Bye.